We are called upon to acknowledge that the current state of Aboriginal health in Canada is a direct result of previous Canadian government policies, including residential schools. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. We are called upon to provide cultural competency training for all healthcare professionals. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada.
I think it's really hard to relate to when you haven't lived the experience. And so I come at it from a position of inquiry, like what happened? How could it have happened in our modern day history? And people didn't know enough to even to ask serious questions. It just unveiled and it occurred, which is astounding to me. And so I think part of the reconciliation is actually an acknowledgement that this event happened in our history, and not just for a period of time, perpetuated for a long period of time, almost to the point where it became normalized.
I think some of the barriers that I've encountered and maybe reflected on myself or my own biases in my relationship with the Indigenous people in Canada. So with the people that come and require support. And the barriers are a real lack of faith and trust in the healthcare system, and that's pretty obvious. And I have more of an awareness of that lack of trust. So really appreciate the need to be open and honest in order to develop a trusting relationship.
I think we have a lot to learn and glean from each other. And I believe in the sharing of opinions, the sharing of beliefs, the sharing of where we come from, even in our own individual pasts. We can find a connection. And I think we need to come from that connection of respect and love and justice and equality and openness. And trust and faith that we'll be able to do this, because if we don't, we're going to be in another historical failure.
I know it's true that this happened. It's terrible and it's shameful. And it's painful, and I think it cut bonds between parents and children and generations, and traditional knowledge was lost and identity, and it was just so damaging to the Indigenous community.
Yeah, so my aha moment came when I was in a Master's of Global Health at McMaster University, and I was taking a course in Aboriginal history in Canada. And that was the first time I'd learned about the history of residential schools and some of the underlying policies that really caused a lot of the history of oppression and assimilation, which really resonates and has impacts with what we see in Aboriginal healthcare today. So that was something where I felt like formal education almost failed me a little bit, is that I'd been in school at that point for almost 20 years, but still hadn't received any formal education about some of the true history, what was going on a lot closer to home.
I consider that we do really noble work. It's honorable to be able to do this work. and we take pride in the work that we do. But we're not going to reach the mark or reach the bar in being able to deliver excellence if we truly don't know what motivates or what has caused pain or trauma within an individual or a group or a community. And so myself, that's not good enough for me. If we're putting our shingle out saying we're delivering care, I'm not signing up for mediocre. And if it means that in order to be excellent, I have to invest time and energy into learning what's going to make a difference, that's what's important to me.
Well, I think it's really important that we listen and reflect, and that we open ourselves to this truth, because it can only improve and make Canada better. We talk about being such a wonderful country, but we're falling short here.
So when I think of barriers and the whole word of reconciliation, I think of coming together as both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. And when we look at the historical past and our cultural conserves, there's been an exclusion, I believe, of the Indigenous peoples. And I think part of our mandate, certainly here at RVH, is to incorporate their culture and their spirituality into the hospital where it's been missing.
So even though I would imagine some of my colleagues have read the news, maybe even read the Commission's report, there's a lot of other information, and unless you seek it to understand it, that you won't. So taking these courses will start exposing you to things that you may not have even ever been aware of.
What we need to learn is how we make those inroads in a way that it will be viewed as trusting and valuable for our First Nations people. And I think that's what the cultural competency course will help us begin to learn and appreciate.
Well, as a healthcare provider, I do feel it's my responsibility to understand and incorporate evidence-based information into my practice to make sure that the people that I care for get the best possible care. And it's inclusive. It should be inclusive. And the CCO courses were relevant in helping me to develop a better understanding of what absolutely inclusive and healing caring in the Indigenous community is about, and what I'm responsible for.
Having completed all 9 cultural competency courses, there's a lot of information, and some of it gets rather heavy because it is filled with truths that a lot of people don't know about. And they don't know about the information because it's not of their own fault, right? It's not our fault why we don't know this information. It just hasn't been implemented into the educational curriculum, and a lot of it has been swept under the rug. But the great thing about these courses is that the information is available to anybody, and it's always there.
So starting with, as I said, I had some past interactions with members of the Indigenous community who educated me, to a point about their culture. And so I thought I knew maybe a little bit more than the average person, and I wanted to do the online courses. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm just busy right now. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And I thought, oh, Romaine, actions speak louder than words. You got to get online. And so I made that commitment. I'm going online. And so I did 2, actually, I'm ashamed to say, recently, last night. There you go, that's the truth. And I got into it. I was up till 1 o'clock in the morning, loved it. And I had known broad strokes, but filling in the details gave me a deeper, a depth and a texture to the little that I realized I really knew. And it's so important.
Healthcare providers typically have a quest for knowledge, but there's multiple. You have to know a little bit about everything. I would say the competency courses walk you through history, reconciliation, so that you have an understanding of what's happened previously. We've all done history courses and things like that. I don't know that it actually hits home until you're looking at it from that cultural competency piece as a healthcare provider, that you're factoring that into, as a healthcare provider, what does that mean? How do I use it as a tool to help you? How does it factor into reconciliation? I think it's knowledge. Knowledge is power. I would never want to say that I understand, because I don't think you can understand until you walk a mile in someone's shoes. But that knowledge is power, and by using that knowledge, I can then provide empathetic care. I can then provide care that's applicable to you, patient-centered, all of those pieces.
I think the most profound thing I learned, again, I think it was the history and how that history affects our relationships now. And without knowing that history and everything that goes behind it, you can't possibly understand the feelings, the emotions, the actions of the people now. And I found that very, very helpful for me, and in conversation now with family members and colleagues, to be able to share that and have meaningful conversations.
You are called upon to participate in Canada's Truth and Reconciliation process. Visit cancercare.on.ca to take this free course.